So in 2012, you could have made the argument that the Philadelphia 76ers were a young team on the rise, headed by point guard Jrue Holiday, who seemed to be on the trajectory to being one of the best guards in the league. Of course, it wasn't all awesome, as number 2 overall pick Evan Turner was disappointing with his expectations, but there was still the idea that he could be something. And when you combined that with Doug Collins, who's a very good head coach, as well as two-way stud Andre Iguodala, there were some good things to feel about the Sixers. And in fact, they actually took the Celtics all the way to a Game 7 in the second round of the playoffs before the old man C's finally woke up. And so, the Sixers, believing they really had something, decided to go for a home run by acquiring Andrew Bynum in the Dwight Howard deal. They had to send away Andre Iguodala to do it, and they believed Bynum was the star player to take him to the next level, but unfortunately for them, Bynum would miss the entire season and his hair got really frickin' weird in the process. And so for the 2013 year, Doug Collins was fired, and then almost immediately after, Sam Hinkie was hired as the general manager, where he started the greatest tank job in the history of sports. And, well, it was proven when only 2 weeks later, the guy traded away Jrue Holiday to the New Orleans Pelicans and gained the rights to someone who's going to play a huge role in this series, Nerlens Noel. And while Nerlens didn't play in 2014 because of an injury, point guard out of Syracuse, Michael Carter-Williams, seemed to be someone that the Sixers could hold on to for the future, as he would win Rookie of the Year. Even then, they were still an awful team, and as a result, they would draft Joelle Embiid out of Kansas, who seems like a great player, but he would miss the entire year as well, and then Sam Hinkie proved how much of an evil genius he was by trading away the Rookie of the Year just a season later, Michael Carter-Williams, to the Milwaukee Bucks, because the outside shot was just so bad, well, he felt, it just couldn't be repaired. And then after an awful 2015 season, they have drafted Jahlil Okafor out of Duke. And I think that's where we can pick it up from here. We're gonna suck, and we have a huge log jam in the paint. Let's start with Jahlil Okafor. In terms of posting up and scoring in the paint, he could become one of the best, if not the best in the NBA in that category, which is great. I mean, having a guy who you can just dump the ball off to and say, hey, get me a bucket, it's fantastic. However, there's a lot of questions about his defense, his mobility, and all the things that you need to be able to do as a big man in 2016 and moving forward. Not only that, but he's going to have to progress on that mid-range shot, because if the only thing he can do is post up, it's really going to hurt us when we're trying to run pick and rolls and things like that, because they just won't defend him from 15 feet out. And as for Nerlens Noel, he's probably our best defensive player right now, but unlike Jahlil Okafor, his offense is a struggle, and unless he is scoring from a pick and roll or he's wide open under the basket, he's so far gone when it comes to posting up, it might not even be worth trying to improve him in that area. But still, Nerlens, he's got the ability to be one of the best run, jump, and dunk centers in the NBA, potentially at power forward as well, though, if his mid-range jumper can progress as well, because he's definitely good enough to defend modern-day power forwards, but if he can't shoot a little bit and provide offense, I don't know if I can play him at that position. And that's definitely going to be an uphill climb, but I think it would be worth it. And then, of course, there's Joelle Embiid, who is kind of like the in-between of Noel and Okafor, because like Jahlil, he can also score on the block. I mean, he got comparisons to Hakeem Olajuwon, for damn sakes. But his mobility and his athleticism allow him to still be effective defensively. Not as good as Nerlens, but good enough to where I don't really have many concerns with him. And I actually think Embiid might have a real chance to be converted to a power forward if necessary, because the mid-range shot isn't too bad, his offensive game is already decently along. I could picture him being in the same vein as Anthony Davis as a power forward, to be honest. But anyway, let's talk about the rest of the roster. We have Ish Smith at point guard, who is a genuine playmaker, so shout out to him. He's also got some decent hair. He also seems like somebody who could be a pick-and-roll player for us, but that outside shot, it's going to take a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work, and I don't know if he's ever going to be a real scorer in the NBA like that, but he's a nice player. There's also Dario Sarich, who can be a stretch power forward for us. Oh, you forgot about Dario, didn't you? He was drafted in 2014 by the Orlando Magic, immediately traded away to the Sixers, where they then stowed him away overseas for a few years. Well, I'm going to take the executive decision of bringing him over to the NBA. And he's a shooter at that 4 spot, like I mentioned, but also he's someone who has the ability to put the ball on the floor a little bit, so look for him to be getting as many minutes as possible off the bench. There's also TJ McConnell, who I don't know if he'll ever be a starting point guard, but he could be Mr. Efficiency for our second unit. There's also Isaiah Cannon, who could develop into a spark, but I don't know if he'll ever be effective from anywhere outside the 3-point line. Robert Covington seems like someone who can be good from outside, but he might have some other abilities as well, given his size. Could be a good defender, may be able to develop into a small ball 4, but he's not going to make many plays with the ball in his hand, so he's kind of limited. There's also Hollis Thompson, who I think actually has the chance to be a decent scorer in the NBA because his outside shot's pretty decent, but he's also showed signs of finishing inside. And speaking of scoring and shooting, to be specific, Nick Stauskas is going to be hoisting him up. We have to see if Stauskas is actually a good NBA player or not, and every time he's open, he better shoot the damn thing. But even with all this, I don't know if any of our perimeter players are real starters in the NBA, but luckily for us, we are going to be absolutely horrible this year, and as a result, we will have a chance to select a wing such as Buddy Hield or Brandon Ingram, who can be a real piece for us. But looking back to our picks for a moment, we also have the Lakers pick. 2K kind of messes this up because in real life, this is a top 3 protected pick. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to flip it on 2K a little bit. If the Lakers finish with one of the 3 worst records in the game, I'm going to give them their pick back because that's what would happen in real life. It's top 3 protected, okay? So here's hoping the Lakers win some games so we get like the 4th or 5th pick in the draft. But if they finish with one of the 3 worst records, they can have their pick back, no problem. Here's our rotation. I ain't trying to give nobody too many minutes because, I mean, we're all pretty much the same in terms of skill level outside of our big men, and you can already see the logjam beginning to develop with our bigs. And so that leads us to the next discussion, which is, these guys are all really centers. Okafor, Noel, as well as Embiid. I do think there's a chance for 1 or maybe 2 of them to be converted into potentially a power forward, which would be awesome. But there's also a chance, and a pretty decent one, we're going to have to trade one of these guys, okay? And if we do that, it would be safe to say we got to move him for a perimeter player, one of which is Jordan Clarkson for the LA Lakers. He's a young player who I think can be a combo guard, probably a shooting guard for us, unlike everybody else on our team who plays the perimeter. He actually seems like he can finish inside as well as be a shooter, which would be awesome. And given that they have Roy Hibbert at center, they don't actually have a center. So I think they could be on board. There's also the Phoenix Suns, and I think Brandon Knight could actually be available because Devin Booker seems like he's going to be an all-star for a long time. So of course he is untouchable, but as a result, I think I'd be willing to take on Brandon Knight. He's only 23 years old, but I don't know, maybe not. But another guy on that roster I'm really intrigued by is TJ Warren, a small forward. And when it comes to smoothness and just how comfortable he is at finishing inside, but also his development when it comes to his outside shot, I think TJ Warren has the opportunity to be a really good player. He just needs those minutes. Now, Phoenix does have Alex Len, who I think has a lot of potential, so maybe they wouldn't be willing to take on another center. We're going to have to see how he's playing. But there's also the Boston Celtics, who have the Brooklyn pick. I mean, look it. I wouldn't mind just trading one of our bigs for the Brooklyn pick and then being able to draft another potential top 5 player. Boston's going to need the scoring inside, so hey, I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities with that trade, but I do know one thing. We're going to suck, and it's going to be a whole hell of a lot of fun.